Hi everybody, this is Al. We're in Philadelphia. Yes, are you ready, Amber?
I'm ready. Here
Oh,
we
yeah.
go.
But Amber, you gotta put the mic neck close.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Amber Rose.
All right.
Hi everybody, this is week 2. We're very amped and excited about our week 2 webcast. Chris and Zach have solved the phone problem, so be our first caller, and that's me. Sorry. Be our first caller and test the system. We should be able to hear you, and you should hear us and all that stuff. The number is 610-616-3208, 610-616-3208. I want to say hello to everybody, and also particularly to a special guest who's here. And then we'll get right into it. So, Davey, hello. Are you near the mic?
Hello, Al.
Hello, Davey. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you. Anna, hi.
Hey, Al.
Amber Rose, again, hi.
Hello again.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Amber Rose gave me some sweet apple cake, and then is having mush.
I'm having some oatmeal. I'm feeling under the weather. It's very cold in here. My mother told me I have to feed a cold. Hi, Mom. This is banana bread
Is
oatmeal.
Mom tuning in from Providence?
Let's hope so.
Hey,
Yay.
Mom! Mama Johnson?
Yeah.
And we have Jess here. Hi, Jess.
Hello.
How are you?
All right.
Good. We have a special guest here. In fact, if you don't mind my saying this, Kate Colby, one of our week 2 poets.
That's
You're a
right.
Week 2 poet. How does that feel? I'm
Feels
sure your
great.
kids call you that all the time. Clean your room. No week 2 poet is going to tell me to clean my room.
When I hit week 1, I'll know I've made it.
Oh, really? I mean, those are Dickinson and Whitman? Dickinson, Whitman, and Colby. Week 1.
I don't
Anyway,
know.
Kate, all kidding aside, thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be back
Really
here.
wonderful to see you. And as a special surprise, everyone who's tuning in and TAs and others who didn't get the memo on this, we're actually going to take a special moment, 10 minutes or so, in this webcast to talk about one of Kate's poems. So the other thing I want to say while we're paused on introducing Kate is that this afternoon, Kate and I and a couple of other people will be talking about Hannah Wiener for a special poem talk, and then more relevantly to people watching, at 6 p.m. in this spot right here, Kate will be reading from her new work. I assume new work, but maybe some old things as well.
All kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff. So a poetry reading by Kate Colby, and although Kate Colby has been to the Writers' House several times, this is the first reading, and I'm abashed that it's taken this long to have a reading, but here it is, and we're very excited about it. And in a minute, I'm going to be holding up books and talking more about Kate's work. And have the honor of introducing you tonight. But what I'll say to the webcast tuner-inners in ModPo land, all the way around there, is that you can watch the live stream of Kate's reading. However, you're not going to come to this link, the link that you use for ModPo. You go to the Kelly Writers House page. Zach, shake your head no if I'm getting this wrong. You go to the Writers House page and you click on KWH-TV. So Writers House is, writing.upenn.edu/WH, or just search in your favorite search engine or your least favorite search engine, Kelly Writers House, and you will get to the Writers House and then click on the KWH-TV and you will see a live stream of Kate's reading. So hi and welcome again.
Thank you.
Thank you. We also have Claire, who doesn't have a mic. Well, maybe Claire would have a mic.
Hello.
Hi, Claire.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm good.
Can we see somewhere? There's Claire moving the automatic
Yes, there it is.
camera. There's Claire. Hello.
Hello.
How are you? And we have Jason. Hello, Jason. How are you?
I'm good. Amber Rose, I also had oatmeal.
Did Amber Rose give you tea, though, is a bigger question.
No, but I
Okay.
haven't had it in
Fail.
like a year.
Okay. Well, good to see you. You have what? What did I miss
I
something?
haven't had oatmeal in years.
Meaning you don't like oatmeal, you're allergic to oatmeal.
I
This
don't
is
like
just a
it,
joke.
but it's
Okay.
serious.
All right. Well, you ponder that while I introduce some other people. Gabe, are you there?
I am here. Do you hear me?
Gabe, yay!
Hi.
Oh my gosh.
Also, I also have oatmeal.
What? What is happening? ModPo people are turning to mush right before our eyes. Gabe, it is so great to see you. ModPo fans, all of whom adore you, not a single exception, missed you last year because you were too busy being a graduate student. But now
How's your work
you're
going?
still a grad student,
I am.
but you've rejoined us because you got your feet on the ground.
Yes, glad to be here. Sorry I missed week 1, but I was luxuriating. But now I'm ready to be here.
Okay, great. It's good to see you. And I believe Jake is here. Hello, Jake.
Hey there, I'm here.
Hi, Jake. You decided to have the sun shining right into our faces, but that's okay.
Oh.
No, you don't have to do. Yeah, that is better, probably. Yeah.
Like
Hi.
that?
Does the hat say something?
Yes, it has an alien on it.
And what is okay?
Stands for our collective alienation and my
You
own
have an
personal one as
alienation
well.
hat? You're wearing an alienation hat for week 2? Cool.
No, just for life, just for being, you know.
That's great. Erica Kaufman, you are here too. Hi, Erica.
Hi, Al.
I always, because I love the region you're in, I always mention weather, but this is a great time of year to be there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite beautiful outside.
I bet it was in the 40s last night. Yay.
Mm-hmm.
And Max McKenna, I believe, is here.
Hi, Al.
Hey, Max. Can you quickly plug the meetups real quick?
Yeah, sure. The first Chicago meetup will be Saturday, September 28th at 11 a.m. at the Harold Washington Library. I'll give some more information on that in the forums in the Chicago thread. So find me there.
Thank you, Max. And Amaris, I think I saw you there too.
Hi, Al. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Amaris. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. We are great. Okay, so 610-616-3208, a couple of announcements, and then a couple shout-outs, and we'll get started. Our poems this week in the main syllabus are William's Smell, which a lot of people were interested in the forum, so I guess we should talk about it. Then Danse Russe, another Williams, and I think we're a little talked out on that in the last few years, but we'll go to it if you want us to. Ginsberg's Supermarket in California. And Davey Niddle has done a really great job of making this poem more and more interesting because of his own work and thinking about urban spaces and this sort of lonely queer body poet guy looking for some tradition, linked to tradition, and not to mention peaches and tomatoes, and then being lonely again. So maybe we'll talk about that. 2 poems by Laurie Niedecker on the so-called Dickinsonian side, Grandfather Advised Me, and Foreclosure, which we'll probably listen to the audio of. I think we should talk about Foreclosure, even though we've talked about it a lot. Such a great poem. And not to mention that it's a Colby-esque poem, I think.
Oh, thank you.
I do think it's a Colby-esque poem, or you're a Niedecker-esque poet sometimes. And Sid Corman's It Isn't for Want, and Ray Armantrout's The Way, also Dickinsonian. In ModPo Plus, anybody want to bring any of these poems up, we'll get into it. There's more Sid Corman, there's another Williams, Catholic Bells, more Ray Armantrout, lots of Niedecker, including Popcorn Can Cover, which I thought maybe we'd talk about, a Hannah Sanghi Park poem, which is very Dickinsonian, a poem by Jason Suska, right here, this guy, Jason. Some poems by Elizabeth Willis that just slay us all. Such a great poet. Francisco Alarcon, and this is a new poem, relatively new poem. Kit Robinson's Leaves of Class, which is obviously a response to Whitman. Divya Victor's W is for Walt Whitman's Soul. Kate Colby's 2 poems, Middleman and Theory. I think they're both from Zach. I think they're both from this book. This one.
That's right.
This poem. This book. There it is. The Arrangements. Yeah. And in fact, the second caller is going to get a copy as a gift from us of The Arrangements. And the poem we're going to talk about in a few minutes is from that book. And a poem by John Phillips, who is not American, but what the heck. So that's what we got. And quick couple announcements. Let's get right to it, okay? In Boston, people are awaiting us on October 10th and October 12th. The ModPo team will be gathering there. We're going to be doing our live webcast from Boston. So for the most of you around the world, you don't have to do anything except tune in the usual way. We'll just be in Boston at MIT that night. And on the 12th, if you're in Boston, come hang with us. And on the 12th, we'll also be hanging around and doing a ModPo meetup, talking about some poems, filming some new videos. Okay, so let's get right to it. I have a way to start here. There's a comment in the forums about Laureen Niedeker's "You Are My Friend." Can anybody remind us what the punchline of that one is? Punchline's the wrong word, but Davey, what happens at the very end of that poem?
At the end of You Are My Friend, it is a poem that is about, it sounds like it's a poem that's about kinship and relationality, but it is about kinship with oneself.
So that's the abstract way of putting it. What's the more like, what does it say at the end of the poem?
I mean, we could just read it.
Yeah, we could. Does anybody remember what the last image is?
My hand.
The hand, right? Yeah. Okay. So we read it the way you first did as a group, and we always do, but Lacey Smith writes to the forums saying, I don't mean to be too literal, but the discussion of the hand being in an empty mending box, well, that is the interpretation for someone who has not repaired a boot. So Lacey is very sweetly and politely accusing us of overreading it and maybe of not being the kind of people who repair boots, which is true in my case, certainly. Some hand or wooden insert or something must be inserted into the empty boot to lift the shape, etc. So in that interpretation, this is a completion of a shared experience, not loneliness or isolation. Some poetry continually amazes me as the same poem, new paragraph. Some poetry continually amazes me as the same poem captures a sense that may be 1,000 miles distant from another interpretation. So what Lacey is also doing there politely, and I'm going to turn to you guys to help us with this, is what if that poem is about repairing a boot and not about all the other things we say it is? Loneliness, I think self-fulfillment and maybe even self-pleasuring, being the only hand of the Dickinsonian poet who writes the poems, etc. So I would like to ask Gabe and then Kate just to comment on the larger question of, is it possible we're overreading that poem? And what are the consequences of that? And could Lacey be right and we're right at the same time? Obviously, the answer is yes. So, Gabe, you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, sure. I don't really believe in overreading too much, but I think that Lacey's interruption is helpful because I think it just reminds us of the work that's like happening in this poem, the actual like labor that is being described and what is needed in that labor. But really, I do think it's still important to think about mending and the kind of relationships that are needed in a mending process. And that kind of still leans into what we're talking about in the sense that it seems to start out with a you and addressed to another person, a kind of kinship relation that then seems to circle back right onto Niedeker and her hand. And I think the thing that gets us there, rather than just the hand being in the mending kit, is the nothing in it but my hand. That nothing feels like just really focusing on what the hand is now doing as like, Niedeker's presence in a new way. Right. So I do agree with you, Al, that I think neither of us are wrong.
Cool. Kate, your thoughts on this?
Well, I read this poem in the context of all of Niedeker's poems, and she works so much with doubleness and kind of figure eights. And so I have to read the nothing but my hand as an invitation for a double reading. Also, that line break, or not the line break, the stanza break, sort of gives us a little nod that there's something going on in there. There's a space that's asking to be scrutinized, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you both. So I believe Anna is looking at Twitter and the forums, and I think Claire is looking at the forums, and I'm also looking at Twitter. Let me just quote a Twitter post from Rama, and also invite you to call us in one more time, 610-616-3208. And Chris, you'll tell me if you've got someone on the phone. So Rama, who's been very active in ModPo, I believe Rama is a first-time ModPo person. Hello, Rama. Thank you for being with us. The Whitman and Supermarket eyes grocery boys and questions about the pork. In Song of Myself, Whitman chats with butcher boys. So this is Rama's observation, I guess, not a question, but I wonder if I wonder if Maurice and Jason would just comment on what Rama is pointing us to there. Focus on eyeing the grocer boys. So, Maurice, what are your thoughts on that, what Rama is pointing us to?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the beginning of that because the volume is quite low. So.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll reread the tweet, and then we'll call on Jason first, and you can listen. So Rama tweeted, "The Whitman in the supermarket eyes grocery boys and questions about the pork. In Song of Myself, Whitman chats with butcher boys." There's a bunch of things going on there. Jason, name one.
Potentially lust and dead pigs.
Lust and dead pigs, yep.
And
can we continue with lust for a second?
Sure.
Because I'm kosher and... no, I'm not really. But let's leave the dead pigs.
Whitman is... The line about... The line that addresses Whitman, "I saw you, Walt Whitman, childless, lonely old grubber, poking among the meats in the refrigerator and eyeing the grocery boys." I've always been bothered by that line in a way that it renders Whitman into a kind of pathetic old man who can do nothing more than surreptitiously eye the grocery boys who would have no interest in reciprocating his gaze.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jason. I'll invite Maurice to say something further, but focus on the eyes, because I think Jason is right to be a little saddened by the eyeing, which implies a lack of contact. But of course, Whitman would be here arguing strenuously that the eyeing is a very important positive gesture. So we'd have that argument. Maurice, anything to add to this?
I would just add that, there's the emphasis on sensuality, on physical experience, on pleasure, and there's something quite transgressive in both images that links the two. Yep.
Thank you, Rama, for posting that. Anna, what do you see in the forums? Anything worth... and Ambrose has something in Facebook. Anna first?
Sure. There's lots of good questions. I think one that I really liked is this question from Elaine Ruth White, one of our CTAs, about Williams's poem Smell.
We're on to smell.
Yeah, let's do smell.
Let's do smell.
Yeah, so Elaine's wondering if smell might be subverting or mocking the classic Rose poems. And saying a whole lot of other stuff too. Sure. But I think that's a really good and really thoughtful question.
All right. Well, let's listen to Smell. Here goes. Ready, Chris? Yes. Okay. Here comes Bill Williams, and then I'll do a little imitation too. Maybe not.
O strong-ridged and deeply hollowed nose of mine, what would you not be smelling? What tactless asses we are, you and I, bony nose, always indiscriminate, always unashamed. And now it is the souring flowers that the bedraggled poplars, a festering pulp on the wet earth beneath them. With what deep thirst we quicken our desires to that rank odor of a passing springtime. Can you not be decent? Can you not reserve your ardors for something less unlovely? What girl will care for us, do you think, if we continue in these ways? Must you taste everything? Must you know everything? Must you have a part in everything?
I want to ask Jess, and then I think Dave Poplar has joined us. Dave, is that true?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi, Dave. Yes, we can hear you. We can see you. I'm going to ask Jess and then Dave Poplar to comment on smell, and you can respond to the question that Anna posed through Elaine, or really talk about any part of it. Jess, you want to take a crack at it first?
Sure. A few thoughts on this. I noticed too in the forums this discussion of the inclusion of souring flowers rather than, the rose, right? The beautiful rose. And that brought my mind to Williams. The rose is obsolete in spring and all. So there's that element of wanting a different object or image. But then, hearing the poem read aloud, and the emphasis on the word everything 3 times repeated at the end, right? There's that impulse to like include everything, which is to say the rotting flowers and the rose. Yeah. So there's that element. And this was a new poem to me. It's I like it a lot, and I think the last thing I'll say is that it seems to be pointing to an affinity between like the domain of the sensual, in this case the olfactory, and like indecency.
And indecency, yeah.
But a kind of like shameless enjoyment of indecency.
Right.
So I liked that, and I think like the inclusion of the indecent is very important to modernism. So this.
And it really fits in this week so well because it's Whitman's omnivorous inclusiveness gone awry, you could almost say, because he's going to get in trouble. But I imagine Whitman got in trouble too. Dave Poplar, your thoughts on any of this?
I really like that. And I love the comparison with the typical romantic rose poems, because when you think about those types of romantic expressions of emotions, they're carefully wrought, contrived almost expressions of emotion. But here, this is just not just Whitmanism, but Whitmania, like the loss of self-control. And in a sense, it's funny because it's almost like a naturalistic justification of the lack of control of infidelity. So I love that contrast.
That's great. Davey, I'm going to ask for like a one phrase answer because it's a real digression from you about Ginsberg here. But then Anna, before we take the phone call, you've taught this course actually more times than pretty much any of us because you're also teaching it through the
6 times last year.
6 times last year. So you know as well as anybody what comes next week as we deal with the rise of imagism, and we focus on things like the making it new through the rose, through the tradition of the symbol. So I'd like you to sort of set us up for week 3 just a little. But Davey first. So we've just heard Jess and particularly Dave focus on the way in which Williams kind of takes the Whitmanian and pushes it to kind of a limit. Does Ginsberg do that in the supermarket where he actually puts Whitman in the poem and it's also indecent, right? In the sense that Jess meant.
It's certainly interested in the material context of indecency, and I think that like the way that I read that poem, or one of the ways that I read that poem, is in thinking about the supermarket is a pretty new space. There weren't supermarkets when Whitman was alive, and it's like a site of the globalization of food production in a way that's just like not a part of Whitman's context. Right. And there's some indecency in the way that Ginsberg is reaching around thinking about how does my body fit in this space and these systems that are so different and on a different scale from Whitman's body and Whitman's systems. Yeah. What do my desires, what does my sensory experience do in this increasingly suburbanized space? How do I fit here differently from Whitman really being able to insert himself in a kind of like luxurious texture of the city that Ginsberg's missing in the suburbs?
That's beautiful and brilliant. Can I ask a very pointed, because we've got to be quick on this because I want to move on, but does Whitmanism, such as it is, can it survive the globalization of markets and the late night, all night families shopping together scene of the grocery store. Is Whitman going to have the Whitmanism? Does Whitmanism have a trouble surviving that?
The extremely short version is yes. I think that's like a tradition of thinking about queer excess. It exists because of a system of regimentation. It exists in tremendous and substantial opposition to an increasing system of regimentation.
Brilliant. Thank you. Kate, do you think, off the top of your head, do you think Whitmanism survives through Williams' version of the indecency? Particularly in a poem like Danse Russe, not so much the Smell poem where he's just plain old indecent in a Whitmanian way, but in Danse Russe he's bounded by a suburban house and he's a little abashed and it's not quite as exotic as it should be.
Well, I was actually thinking about the rotting blossoms and the nose as akin to eyeing the butcher boys, and the rotting blossoms being kind of the vegetal equivalent of Whitman's teeming masses.
Oh
and
my
all
gosh,
three
that's
poets
great.
have this Yertle the turtle quality, like king of all they see, like whatever they perceive belongs to them. But there's, even though there's a nominal populism going on among all of them, can it hold up in an actual democratic world?
That's
I don't
my
know.
question, really. In neither case
don't
can it
think
hold
so.
up that well, but Davey's making a good case for what it might do for us positively as a kind of critique or a sadness or a loneliness it produces, and the resistance that can come of it in someone like Ginsberg as he experiences this alienation might turn into something positive later. There's someone on the phone, and I'm sorry I'm delaying this, but Anna, I really wanted you to say just a word or two in anticipation of week 3 of ModPo as to why this conversation we're happening now about the rose and about the pulp, why that becomes a mantra for modernism as it arises.
Sure. I mean, I think in teaching week 3 to my own students this week, a lot of them are really struggling with this concept of the Imagist poets being really so different than anything that we've seen in ModPo previously, and certainly to contemporary readers in poetry previously. And I guess what's important about reading the Imagist poets and the early modern poets is that what they're after is one of what will become one in a series of radical aesthetic breaks from what we'd seen previously from the norms. This idea that the poetry of the 20th century, given that the 20th century itself was so different than what had come previously, because of technology advancements and wars and super destruction and all kinds of things. What's important is writing a poetry that's going to be commensurate with the newness of the new century.
Right. That's so well put. Thank you. It's almost like a perfect head note. So before we even hear the question of the caller, I would like to ask Amber Rose, Jake, Erica, and Max, all 4 briefly to respond to whatever the question is as a way of proving to everyone that this whole thing is so fucking improvised, that we haven't a clue. We're not matching your questions to the right person to answer. We're matching your questions to any of us trying to answer. We're just where you are, flying by the seat of our pants. Who is on the phone?
We have John Owen calling from Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
John Owen, great. Okay, bring John up. Hello, John, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, John.
Hey, Al, I feel like I'm getting to know you.
Oh, you are. John, you are really doing such a wonderful job in the forums. We really appreciate your involvement in the forums. You're great. You're a little ahead of us, though, John. You're in week 4. And I think it's great.
I actually started week 5.
Oh, John, you're killing us.
Morning coffee activity.
Oh, I don't even know you, John, but I love you. I mean, it's Whitman week. We might as well it's not Whitman week. It's post-Whitman week. No, really, I don't know what you're doing or why you have the time, but it's fantastic. And it's okay that you're posting to week 5, but just forgive us because you do a new thread for almost every poem, but you're so far ahead of us that I feel like if I respond, it's going to cause that to pop to to get to the top of the threads, and then everybody's going to be wondering why we're talking about week 5. So... But keep doing what you're doing. Are you having fun with this?
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you, I've got an MA in English, and I thought I would never get back to literature.
Was the MA a long time ago?
Yeah, decades ago.
Was it at
And,
UNC? Did you get it at UNC?
Have you ever heard of Southern Poetry Review?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my father founded that.
Really? So it's in the family.
Yeah.
You owe it to your father's memory. I'm just assuming it's a memory. That is to say, I'm assuming he's passed. But you owe it to him to get into poetry belatedly.
Well, I guess it's belatedly. He passed away when I was 20.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And we talked a lot about literature. I had a literature degree. I was working on one then.
Mm.
But we never talked much about poetry. I actually wanted to take a minute to have a poetic interlude there because there's a ModPo Poets and Writers on Facebook.
Yes.
And I started a classical ringa, which, may presage week 3 in part.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought if you would humor me, I would read it. I started it. There's been some interplay.
John, can I just frankly ask you how long it is?
Well, there's been 19 interchanges. But, ringa is not...
Yeah, I think I would say, with all respect, I'd rather you sent it to me because what we want to do is use this moment to get a question or a topic for the group so we can talk about it, if that's okay. But you've just done a great job of plugging the Renga. So everybody listen.
I'll throw something else out there.
Say that again?
I'll throw something else out.
Okay, as long as it's a week 2 thing.
Okay, but Whitmanian.
Okay.
You were just talking about whether the Whitman influence could survive the urban environment.
Yes.
And I think some of the answer to that is a poet that's not being covered, and that's Hart Crane.
Hart Crane, yes. That's
the
great.
Bridge.
Yep. So what I'm going to do, John, is I'm going to transform that or restate that as a question that 4 of our TAs can answer. And we'll ask that you hang up so that someone else can call. But I really do want to just repeat how much I'm enjoying, and I think we all are, your participation in ModPo. And I hope you'll get into the old car and come on up here and be with us for a webcast. Would you do that?
Long drive for me.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe you could make a visit to Chapel Hill at some point.
I think there's some ModPo people down there.
First.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. John, thank you for calling. Take care. Okay, great. So that was John Owen from Chapel Hill. So rather than focus on Hart Crane, who is interesting but not currently part of our conversation, just want to ask, and this is going to be Amber Rose, Jake, Erica, Max, to say each of you briefly what the Whitmanian influence is as it goes forward. What is it? What interests you about it? What are its problems and failings? How do you think it's survived? Maybe anticipate later in the course what happens to it. Does it go away and come back? Just a sort of, almost a quickie response to that. And Amber Rose, if you want to defer, I can go to somebody else first. But
I can give a quick video plug.
Go ahead.
Yeah. There's a YouTube video of one of our Chapter 9.3 poets, Kenny Goldsmith, reading a sort of tracing a poetic lineage from Walt Whitman
through Hart Crane
to himself, which is a deeply Kenny thing to do. Reads from Traffic at the end.
He reads from Traffic, which is Whitmanian in the blab of the pave sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a YouTube video if you're interested in
fact,
seeing that lineage.
You forgot to mention this was at the White House.
I did forget to mention that, yeah.
This was at the Obama White House.
And he's wearing a white or a yellow paisley suit.
And you know what Obama said to him?
Nice threads.
Nice threads. He's wearing a paisley suit, and Barack Obama never at a loss for words.
Nice threads.
Okay. You bought a little time. Amber Rose, the Whitmanian, what do you think?
Yeah, I am interested to hear what the other TAs think about this. When I think about the Whitmanian influence, the biggest thing for me is the sort of the I that is simultaneously very self-interested and very capacious in a way that tries to include everyone else or a larger community.
Yeah.
And I think thinking about Whitman's body and what it meant for Whitman as a white American male to be writing in a time where that I felt maybe capacious enough to him to include so many others. And now I think we have to think a little more critically about how we slip from the singular to the collective. And I think that there are ways in which that is able to continue, but it gets more and more politically fraught. And we have to think more critically about how we expand that I and whose voice and body can claim that I'm actually thinking about all of the people of New York or all of the people in whatever kind of entity I'm thinking about.
Oh, I think that Williams risks the same problem. Even in a poem like Danse Russe, where, you know, he's just in his north room dancing naked, and who's bothering? But he dances with his buttocks against the closed shade, and someone is out there watching. Benita Cape, who is in New Zealand, and it's 4 a.m. right now. Benita, hi. Can't believe you stayed up. Benita Cape in Gisborne, New Zealand, which according to Benita is the furthest east. Is that right? East? Yes, the furthest east place with any kind of population. I can't believe, since the world is round, that there's such a thing as the furthest east. But anyway, and wrote a response to Williams that includes basically her version of going upstairs while everybody is sleeping and her dancing naked, but she forgets to close the shade. Someone calls the police, and the poem goes, "Why did you stand silhouette near an open window? And though spoken to, they had let the man go on his way. There was somebody out there." So there's a traumatic scene. Then she writes, "I want not to have to write such poems. I want not to have forgotten the heat of summer, the window left open when my husband early retired to bed. I want not to be interrupted in the cherishing of my own self-esteem." I mean, there's a way in which Benita is, and this is a response to ModPo, responding to Williams saying, well, if I were to do this, the poem turns into some creepy person coming after me, and someone calls the police. And, you know, you, Bill, can get away with this, but I, Benita, even in the easternmost spot, you know, I'm in an east-facing window, there's still some creep out there. Interesting. So thank you, Benita, for the poem, and you should get some sleep. 4 a.m., that's outrageous. Erica, Jake, Max, quick responses to the question of the Whitmanian, because we have someone else on the phone. I'm sorry, Jake first.
Sure. Well, I like what Amber Rose said. And maybe to pick a slightly different thread of Whitmanian influence, I'm thinking maybe of observing and having an experience in urban spaces. And I remember a Ginsberg interview. I think it was an interview where he talked about the process of writing. And he said, one of the things to do is to walk the streets of New York for hours and hours and hours. And by the end, you want to cry because you're having such an maybe ecstatic experience of looking at these tall buildings. And sort of like just viscerally what happens to a person who is spending all day walking between these gigantic buildings, right? So I think that's another Whitmanian direction. And somebody like Frank O'Hara, who is also relishing city experiences and is essentially building whole poems around things that happen around him in the city. I think that's another
really good point. Thread. I think O'Hara isn't spoken of as a Whitmanian poet very often, but there's certainly something there. Thank you, Erica. Quick thought on this.
Yeah, I think that, you know, for me, and again, I agree with what Amber Rose elegantly said, like, you know, remembering that Leaves of Grass was 1855 and just, you know, the impact history has had on how we read the text. I think that for me now, when I think about the influence of Whitman, I think a lot about two things: diction, so the idea that you can write a poem in diction that people actually speak. And two is what he does to the line and the expansiveness of this line that doesn't need to rhyme. I think you see influences of that in the New York school, so O'Hara, Kenneth Koch, and I also would make a quick plug for Divya Victor's work, which is in ModPo Plus this week.
Yes, perfect. Great, thank you. And Max, your quick thought on this, and then we'll go to the phone.
Yeah, sure. I would just want to seize the thread of Whitmanianism that I want to seize on is the idea that the information, minutia, and stimuli of modern everyday life not only can be recorded and described, but that it ought to be. And I think I think that becomes clear over the course of the syllabus, especially when we get to the more difficult week 9, week 10 poems that we want to lump into Whitmanianism.
Which is sort of one in a cliche of ModPo. We talk about how Whitman comes back through that capaciousness. Whether that's true or not can be tested. Chris, we have someone on the phone. And that person is going to get a copy of Kate Colby's The Arrangements, which I think Kate would agree to inscribe. So who is it?
We have Allison Fraser calling from Canada.
Yay.
Hey, Allison. Allison, can you hear me?
Al, can you hear me?
Yeah, how are you, buddy?
Great. How are you? Calling from near Toronto, as always.
Yeah, you'd made the trip from Toronto to Montreal to see us last year.
Yes, I was just telling we have a study group of 2 here with my buddy here, Joshua Seguin, in Montreal.
Awesome.
As I was telling Chris, we really do all live on the same street, so he's my neighbor over in Montreal. And we've been studying together and finding a lot of commonalities. So he really wants this book. Do you think I could pass it along to him if I give the address?
Absolutely, we can do that. So Kate just needs to know.
The book.
So this is Joshua Seguin. We know Joshua from the forums, right? Is that Joshua?
Yes, he is a poet. He is currently cellular impaired, so I'm phoning on behalf of both of us.
Okay,
and we
great.
are interested in adding to our study group
Great.
as well. We've been focusing on the Whitman in ModPo Plus.
Great.
And we relate to this very much as both of us are singers. And Josh is actually a poet. He's working at this moment on his next self-published work. So we do relate very much. Out of the Cradle, Endlessly Rocking, and On the Beach at Night Alone is where we've been.
I like that one.
So I don't know. I don't really have a question.
That's all right. I have a
lots of
question for you. I have a question
Good.
for you.
Let's see if I
So
can
what we're going
redeem
to do
myself.
is, I believe Chris will take the address, one of the 2 addresses, yours or Joshua's. Kate will inscribe this book to Joshua. We'll get it there. And all I want you to do then is, that's for inscribing, and then Chris will help you with the address, and Lily will mail it. All I want you to do then for everyone who's listening is to say to be positive about the experience of coming out to see us when we travel somewhere. Was that fun? What did you get from it? What's the difference between, coming to a webcast live and watching it on your screen? Would you recommend the experience?
It was absolutely incredible. I mean, for me, it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I hope it won't be my last experience meeting all of you. But I really would describe it as something that has to be done if you are a ModPo lifer or even just interested in becoming one. I think that it would be worthwhile. It was particularly special to me as I'm a graduate of Concordia University where the event was held, and familiar with the city. So it was doubly impactful, and it was just wonderful to see all of you in person and to have the chance to spend some time with you as well outside of the webcast. I was really appreciative of that.
Thank you, Allison. And we went out afterwards and had some beers, which was fun.
I was just mentioning that actually to I think it's Chris on the phone, is it?
Yeah.
How much I enjoyed having that time with all of you, and also with the poets who were able to attend from the surrounding area and beyond.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you for being such a presence in our Facebook group. And I hope maybe you and Joshua will make a road trip to Boston on October 10th or October 12th. I say that jokingly, but maybe so.
I would love to. As you know, my friend Sanjeev is now situated in that area, and I have a much better chance of getting to meet with him and his lovely
Better than when he was in India, yes. Exactly.
Even the communication's better. I don't have to stay up until the middle of the night in order to chat with Sanjeev. So it's all coming together. I think we're all coming closer to each other.
Yes.
If if even psychically.
Yes. Thank you, Allison. Thank you so much. We'll get this book to Joshua. Thanks for
Studying.
calling.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Al.
What we're going to do now is we're going to look at a poem by Kate Colby, and we're going to talk about it. So who doesn't have a copy? Because I have 3 copies here. Everybody got a copy? Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask Kate to read it, but I also am going to give the phone number out again. But if you call in the next minute or 2, you might have to wait until we're finished talking about Kate's poem, 610-616-3208. So,
also,
Kate,
folks looking for this poem, I believe you posted a picture of it in the forums. Yeah,
I did. It's in the thread where we've got the live webcast thread. And, you know, it's short enough, I think you can hear it. Is it in there?
Yeah,
yes, I
it's way
see
at the
it.
bottom.
Yep, okay, good. All right. Kate, do you mind? It's called Homing.
You got it.
Okay. Poem to order.
Homing. I draw curtains across what I can't see. I want nothing so badly to take place like a pill. Live in this lit circle, falling on thresholds without doors. Rooms I know are there still.
Thank you, Kate. That's Homing by Kate Colby. So what we're going to do is a kind of a very quick condensed version of what we've done in our videos, which is to do a close reading, except this time the poet is not only sitting there, but is looking at us as if to say, what are you going to do to my poem? And maybe the poet herself will be involved in the conversation, so see what happens. All right, so I'm going to do something I don't do in the videos, which is actually sort of identify the order in which we'll get comments from people. So Jess, you'll be first. Gabe, you'll be second. Amaris, you'll be third. And Anna, you'll be fourth, and then we'll open it up to anybody else who wants to say something. Start us off, Jess. Anything, anywhere, what's going on?
Okay. This is sort of outside the box, perhaps, but I saw a dance performance recently in which a dancer was moving around and through like a lit circle, a spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me think about movement and the way that there is movement and then stillness or like continuity, the word still, which when hearing it aloud, I sort of got the doubleness of that, as in still as in something remains but is also still. So just the very end of the poem, this sense of falling, right? A kind of, to me, that's a sort of movement that you let something happen. You're letting the body fall, and there's this sense that some space that's been created, something remains.
Wow.
And so I came to that through thinking about this dance performance. Like I said, that's an aside, but
Wow. That's a really interesting start. You're talking about the movement of the poem. I love it. Gabe, you want to pick up on that or add a new point?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll do both of those things. I just want to make sure that we mention the way the line breaks are working here. And it's funny actually to hear Kate read it, mostly because it seems like she's really emphasizing how these line breaks
She
are working.
really did, more than I thought she would.
Yeah. So probably the 2 stanzas that's like most obvious. I want nothing, line break, so badly, line break, to take place, line break, like a pill. So that line continues to sort of like, every time the line breaks, you kind of get a different meaning or a different expectation of what the line will be or how it'll end. So you think, I want nothing, so there can't be a sort of like level of desire for wanting nothing, but then you get the modification of so badly, and then you get the modification to take place, so it's like a different kind of wanting. And then like a pill just kind of comes out of nowhere because it's like, it's a hard simile just because the characteristics of a pill don't really fit here. So this is just to me like really Armentrout-y. It reminds me a lot of the way. And I think like this is just hopefully getting to Jess's point of how the way the poem moves. That kind of stilted, but really like always adding something a little more complex at every kind of stilted movement. It feels so Ray Armentrout to me.
Great. Gabe, thank you so much. Amaris, you want to go a little further with this?
Yeah, I was really interested in how this poem seems to revolve around the theme of enclosures, of drawing boundaries. There's the circle, the rooms, drawing curtains from the first line. And tying that in with the title, it really felt to me like the poem is talking about exploring hidden rooms within the self, spaces of blindness, either unconscious or unconscious. This kind of, it seems, a sensing that there are areas of the self that she hides from herself to escape. And the homing idea is the idea of using intuition to come, to locate those areas of truth that are hard to swallow. And that maybe that like a pill smack dab in the center is a hope that that journey could be easy. It could be a process of, instantaneous understanding of the self, but rather there is this circular movement of having the courage to home in on those hidden rooms.
Wow. You guys are amazing. Thank you, Amaris. Anna, I'm going to get a little more pointed in asking questions, and then we're going to open it up to a couple more. Yeah, to a couple more comments, and then we'll invite Kate to say anything she wants about this. Anna, so Amaris drew us closer to a Dickinsonian sense of enclosure, of insideness, pardon me, Kate, a psycho-emotional interiorization. Someone's in a house, maybe there's some movement wandering, but there is a drawing curtains across, which is to say against. There's a self-blinding or a self-not seeing, and of course the title has that powerful pun. So I'm going to ask you about the Dickinsonian quality, if you don't mind.
Well, I was actually going to draw a lineage of Dickinson in I Dwell in Possibility, to Niedecker in Foreclosure, to Armentrout in The Way, now to Colby in Homing, of these poems.
You're in that line. You like that line?
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it feels good, right? It's a good line. Of poems that create spaces in poems that are about spaces, building houses, real or imagined, or houses being taken away, or houses that are remembered, spaces that are remembered. And all of those things all of those are things that poems can do, and I think that a thing that I think this poem does really powerfully, and all of that comes from Dickinson, right? Dwelling in the house of possibility, a house that feels equal parts very real and totally elusive, right? The house of possibility is like, right, yeah, it's got windows, but then it's got these huge doors, and the roof is the sky, right? It's a house that's equal parts, like I can sort of see it, but I really can't. It's a house that exists as a function and a fixture of an imagination. And what is any thought but an imagined thought, right? What is any space that we build in our minds but, this thing that you can't quite communicate, or it's half-formed, or it's intentionally half-formed.
Yes.
And I think all the poets that I just named sort of in this line are dealing with that, the poem being the thing of, or at least an attempt to convey the kind of space that I'm in.
Kate, you can react in any way you want to any of this or add some other quote-unquote information. I'll just turn the screw just a little bit further and say that the part of the I Dwell in Possibility poem that is powerful here for me is the fairer house than prose. You don't make a case for poetry except implicitly by writing a poem that could only say what it says as a poem. But one gets the sense that the possibility of this poem is this interior space that gets constructed by something that's fairer than prose, better than prose, more powerful than prose. It's almost an affirmation of the work, the formal work that you're doing. Anyway, Kate Colby, nice poem. Snaps for Kate Colby's Homing and so many other poems in the book. What do you think?
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. I thank you all so much. I'm disinclined to add anything about the poem. Anna, you made me cry a little bit.
What is it about what Anna said that really got to you?
Well, I mean, those are my people.
They are your people, so we're right. You are a week 2 poet.
Yeah, for sure.
Proudly.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess the one thing I'll say is I don't live like a hermit, but there is a hermetic quality to my thinking and writing that I think is not replicates, but reflects the other poems in other poets in that line. And we're all women. There's something there too.
Do you want to say a little more about that?
Nope.
Okay. Great. So that's Kate. Thank you all for that. Thank you, Kate. Chris, we have someone on the phone, I think? No, we don't. Okay, so it's 610-616-3208. What I'd like to do is ask Amber Rose from Facebook, Claire from the forums, would you grab the mic from Jason, and Anna from Twitter. Just what's the best thing there that you're interested in? Just to quote it, maybe not to comment, but just to quote it. Anna?
Sorry, can I do a forums one?
Yeah, sure.
Because I've got both.
Please. Yep.
There is just a comment that I just love from Pearl in the forums.
Mm-hmm.
Pearl writes, "It seems that both Dickinson and Whitman claim explicitly or implicitly that the poem, the eye, the grasp of paradise in small hands, the running maniacally through all sorts of experience. Both poets claim this special sight of all, especially poignant for Dickinson and brash and gobsmacking in the case of Whitman. This bold, dazzling love of the dazzle and in the writing being the dazzle."
Wow, Pearl, that's
yeah, right?
fantastic.
That's so good.
That's so great. Amber Rose, anything in Facebook you want to quote?
Yeah, well, I have a question from Facebook.
Okay. I don't know if we'll take time to answer it fully, but we'll see what we can do. No, that's good.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood.
That's right.
Well, Lawrence had asked earlier in the webcast if we could, that it seems like he had a sense of, better summary. What is the criteria of a Dickinsonian poet? And maybe we can use like what we were just talking about in Kate Colby's poem to orient ourselves around that question. We did some of that with Whitman, but he's wondering what that criteria actually is. How do we make sense of that logic?
Everybody okay if we do that? Okay, let's do it. And Claire, you hold on to an interesting forum post. So Jake, Erica, Max, Dave Poplar, and Davey. That's a lot of people. Can you can we compile, and Jason, so you'll have to get the mic back. Can we compile phrase length? Because we're running out of time. We want to move on some other things. Take one more call. Phrase length, definitions, characteristics. What is on your list of what could be Dickinsonian? Not that anybody has to really follow this like a dictionary, because who cares? But ultimately, people are interested in categories. So I think it was Jake first. Jake, compile a first characterization or definition of what might be Dickinsonian. Go.
Terse, mercurial, experimental in its approach to grammar and sentence structure.
I love it. That's number one. Erica?
Fragmentary, pre-imagist.
Fantastic. Oh my God, I love this exercise. Somebody taking notes? You Twitter people, are you taking notes? We need to compile this. Max, add one.
Not concerned with a typically thought of masculine world of works and deeds.
Yes, and therefore not so concerned with explaining everything fully in a kind of empiricist's way, not needing to do that, not explaining. Dave Poplar, add one.
Thinking about it in contrast with Whitmanian vibe, which is without filter, this could be carefully distilled.
I'm sorry, we're all distracted by a weird ringing. I think it might be happening over by Zach. Could you say that again, Dave?
I was just saying, in contrast to the unfiltered Whitmanian vibe, I would describe Dickinsonians as carefully distilled.
Yes. And discerning, discriminating as in discerning, right? Making distinctions. Jason,
Yes.
add one.
Kate said she wasn't a hermit, but one thing that the Dickinsonians have in common is
I'm sorry, is his mic on?
Is my
No,
mic?
can you turn the mic on? Okay.
It's on.
Zach, are you hearing him? You got to get closer to it.
Okay.
There you go.
That the writers of the Dickinsonian poems are introverted, and that might be due to social conditions, and it may be that is their nature.
Yes, that's well said. Davey and then Kate.
These have all been so good.
They have been good.
Focus on material and neurological experience as it determines the quality of attention.
Yes, nice. Who's compiling this? Kate, follow that.
I think of Dickinson and Niedecker and Armentrout as like the shortest distance between 2 points, whereas Whitman might be the longest, like a snapshot or a momentary. I don't know what the word is.
Yeah, I like that. We think of the Dickinsonian poem as very indirect, but in some ways, you're pointing out it's quite direct.
Yeah. I'm so glad I got that question in. That's a fantastic list.
Yeah. I'm going to add one, and then I think there's someone on the phone. We're going to go to the phone, and this will be our last call. Rereading Sid Corman's many, 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 many meta-poems, I'm reminded at how often Dickinson's poems include in them some reference to the fact that this thing that is being presented to you is a poem, or has been written, or is a fragment that was written by someone who writes fragments, or, written by someone whose analogy for all experience is the writing of poems. So I'm going to read you a few Sid Corman poems, though really in a lot of ways Sid Corman is not a Dickinsonian poet, but in this way is. Who was I to have brought you this, and who are you to have brought me to? You are here, just as I had imagined, imagining me. Here's another one. Did I ever exist? Ask the poetry. If no answer is there for you, I have none either. It isn't what you think, but what you're thinking. Is this really a poem? I've been reading the same poem all my life and still don't know what it means, if it means anything. But isn't it enough that it is a poem? That was a great list. Thank you all. And now we have someone on the phone, and then we're going to wrap up with final words. So who's on the phone?
We do. Mary Whitaker is calling from Utah.
Oh, fantastic. Mary, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Al.
Hi, Mary. Tell us a little bit about your connection to ModPo.
I started this probably 7 years ago and earned my certificate the first year. And then I've slummed and continued to study poetry, archaeology, and art.
Wow. Utah's a great place for archaeology, isn't it?
Oh, we're like the center of the universe for archaeology.
Yeah.
I was so struck by homing because I felt a centering, setting boundaries, closing the curtains. All of that allows you to center yourself within yourself. It's not just the home, the building, the house or apartment, but it's yourself. You're centering yourself.
That's so great. Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
I don't know if Kate will want to say anything in length in response, but I'll invite her first to say anything in response to what you said, and then anybody else. Kate, what do you think when you hear Mary say that?
Thank you, Mary. I think that's just right. I think it's a poem about a longing to be located in order to locate. And yeah, that's all.
Wow. Did you just say a longing to locate is
No. A longing to be located in order to locate.
And the longing to be located is itself an act of trying to locate. That is, those two
Yes.
things are working together. Well, Mary thinks so.
Yeah. I mean, the word homing, to navigate toward a thing is opposed to the idea of a home.
Mm-hmm.
Homing in the plain sense is like a carrier pigeon coming back home.
Right.
But homing in are you journaling? I am homing, meaning I am being at home. That's there too, yeah?
Yeah.
It's a neologism.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's also a little HGTV in there.
Mary, thank you for calling.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. 7 years of ModPo. I guess you would recommend this community to others.
Definitely, especially when you're out here in the middle of nowhere.
Are you really in the middle of nowhere?
We're near St. George, Utah.
Oh, way down there.
Way down there, yeah.
St. George is growing fast. I've
Tell
been
me.
there. It's too fast. A lot of fast food restaurants and stuff. But you're probably 30 miles when you're in St. George from absolute desert of Nevada.
Exactly.
And actually, it's like only an hour and a half to Vegas from there.
Well, 2 hours.
2 hours. Wow. Okay. Well, that is cool. Please stay with us. I'm afraid there's probably not going to be a meetup in St. George, Utah, and maybe we should go. What? Davey wants to go to St. George.
Yeah, let's go.
If you can promise that we will find a T-Rex in the ground, we'll come out there.
You will. There are dinosaurs remains all over here, and there's a lovely dinosaur park out here that
Wow.
we could go to. But there's also some really hidden gems in ancient art and modern art. So
Wow. That's great. Well, thank you, Mary, for being with us all these years. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Great. Well,
Thank
so yeah, Chris, we're not going to take any more calls. Let's get final words going all around. There's a lot of us, so please think about what you'd like to say. It could be a plug for office hours, although why don't I just say for all of us, the office hours are great. Take a look at the list. Join office hours. So that will free you all up. And Claire, with apologies that we didn't get to your quoting of form, but I would love for you to get. Okay, fantastic. But I'd like you to get a final word as well. So let's go around. Dave Poplar first, and then Amber Rose. So Dave, final thought.
I just wanted to tell everybody, if anybody is in or around Tucson, Arizona, where I am right now, just hit me up in the forums. I wanted to see if there's enough people to get some meetups together.
Great. Thank you, Dave. I hope you get some good response to that. Amber Rose, final thought.
First, I just want to give a shout out to Sanjeev in the Facebook because Sanjeev is always the best, but is like on it with links and phone numbers and resources, and is just one of the best folks we have in ModPo. So shout out to you, Sanjeev. But I'll also just say about this Kate Colby poem, it was so nice to have a new poem for us to do a collective reading of. And I really love this poem, and I'm thinking about the lines, I want nothing so badly to take place, and how that is a true desire. I was talking to Davey about my inbox. I was talking to you, Al, about my inbox, and so many things are happening at the speed of light all the time. And I want so badly to have a couple moments where nothing is taking place. So it's just nice to have a poem that calls, that speaks to that very real and intimate and like singular desire, and know that it's also shared, even as it feels so like close and closed.
Thank you, Amber Rose, for that great final word. Claire, to you with a final word, and then I want to go to Amaris.
I think also on the topic of Kate's poem, I just really enjoyed the idea of homing and centering yourself in like a location within yourself, like not a physical geographical location, but like the way you said locating yourself. I think that like really struck a chord with me. So I wanted to just say thank you. It was beautiful.
Thank you, Claire. I think we're going to go to Amaris next, and then Max after that. And I just want to note as a footnote that a chapter 9.1 poet because he's not known in any other way.
Smooth with the sunglasses.
Chapter 9.1 poet Charles Bernstein, a dear friend of the Writers' House, of Penn Sound, of ModPo, and of me personally, has just sat down and, there he is. And we might actually give him the mic for a second so he can just say hi, okay? All right, so... And nobody can hear what you're saying, Charles. Yeah, nobody can hear what you're saying. You need a mic. If you don't have a mic in ModPo, you don't exist. But we'll get a mic to you. I forgot who I said should go next. Amaris, final thought, Amaris?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to thank you for sharing those additional Sid Corman poems. I really enjoyed them. Charles, it's been so long. It's really good to see you. And a brief note, I guess, that Sid Corman poem, Imagining Me, Imagining You, I think just sums up everything about the experience of encountering a poem. And to go back to our first question about, the possibility of overreading Niedecker, if you're coming to the poem in the space of your imaginary, it's totally your right to limit yourself to a literal reading, but, why not take it upon yourself to overread and give yourself that license if it's going to, deepen the experience of that poem for you. That's my final word.
Thank you, Amaris. And I would also add that if it's a poem appearing in ModPo, there's a good chance that it's not that a literal reading is not the only one. So there's a kind of curation bias going on here. Well, I don't remember who was next, but I'd like to ask Jess to go next, and then Jason. Final thought?
Final thought. Thanks, Kate, for sharing this poem. It was great to encounter it and to speak together about it. And my final word is stillness. Following up on what Amber Rose said, I share that desire and a desire for stillness and for finding ways of locating that.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you so much. Jason, final thought?
I actually, Amber Rose pointed out, I want nothing so badly to take place. And I like the idea of taking place, like taking it somewhere else. But then I want to commend Kate for the pivot of like a pill, which is to take something that is minuscule and compact, that is not a place, and the idea of it opening a place. I also, and the poem pivots at that after those two P's. With each line, pretty much you can read on its own as its own thought. And I also want to plug Divya Victor's W for Whitman, because I think that we don't want to forget that there are still dynamic urban spaces where there are Whitmans yet to be.
Thank you, Jason. Fantastic. I want to go to Anna and then give Charles the mic so he can just say hi, please. Anna and then Charles.
The thing that I have always really, really liked about week 2, and the reason that I'm so happy that week 2 exists in ModPo in the place that it does, is that it really lets us think about poetic communities and poetic lineages. I think so often we consider poets sort of like in isolation, or we just think about one poet's work or reading one poet's work. But what week 2 is all about is like thinking about how poets have formed communities and how poets are thinking about each other and responding to one another and sort of addressing one another and, assimilating one another in their work, to use the Kristeva phrase, we're all just a tissue of citations. And I think week 2 really does do that really beautiful work. So I guess going forward, I would hope that we can sort of keep the week 2 spirit in each of the subsequent weeks and thinking about how poets talk to each other and respond to each other and work within and without each other. And to not think of any poet as like a isolated thing. You know, it takes a village to write a poem.
It's such an astute observation about the course, Anna, because this is the only week in which we go long-wise.
Yeah.
Right. This is a lineage week. The ongoing influence of Dickinson and Whitman. The rest of the weeks cluster people more or less generationally and somewhat thematically or ideologically. But this one goes all the way down, and we don't do that again. I don't dislike the idea that, for instance, that we would focus on a moment when the rise of imagism could stand for a way in which modernism happened. And I don't mind that we get to the New York school because of their response to the previous poets, or, and the person's about to speak, part of the language school. They're sort of moving on from the new American poetry, but also having very close relationships to it. So the communities you describe can happen within, such as the language poets community, but it has to also happen across time for it to be. So that, you know, when Kate was moved by your setting up a lineage, you know, you can't talk to, well, you can talk to Ray, but you can't talk to all those other poets except through the poems. So the community has to exist in the reading of the poetry. So thank you for that observation. Charles, just say hi. You have a mic? Push the button, say hi.
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 It's
Who
nice
are
to
you?
be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
I was so happy to stumble upon you all talking, and Jason
Stumble is
Suska,
literally
what a wonderful person he was to work with when
Who we
he got
talking
his
about?
PhD. Jason, who just spoke.
Oh, Jason, yes.
And Amaris, such a wonderful and absolutely riveting undergraduate. So to hear those two people was just a great pleasure
That's
for
what
me. As I
ModPo is all
return
about.
because of you to do a tone talk with Davey on
And with Kate.
and with Kate on Hannah Wiener. So
Yeah.
it's great to be here.
Thank you, Charles. And for the ModPo people, we will be getting to Charles's work in some weeks. Okay, thank you, Charles. I want to turn to Davey and then Kate for a final thought.
I'm going to read 2 sentences.
Okay.
These sentences are going to continue what I mentioned last week about wanting to take this time through the course to think about disability poetics and embodiment. And these 2 sentences are from an essay called The Disability Poetics of William Carlos Williams and Larry Agner by Raphael Allison. Here are these 2 sentences. The one sentence of context is that Williams had strokes in 51, 52, and 58. For the late Williams, the body is a site not of physical presence, but of increasing simulation, and the real is audible in the vocal cracks and fissures hidden and normalized to the reader's best ability. For Williams, vocal disability led to a struggle for the presence of adequate or normal reading and was ultimately simulated rather than fully achieved. I'm going to post a bunch of sections from this essay in my office hour, which is today at 4, and if you want to talk about Williams and disability, that's what I'm going to do.
Thank you, Davey. That is fantastic. Kate Colby, thank you again for joining us. Snaps for Kate Colby. We're so happy that you're here.
Thank you all so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the generous reading. Thank you for welcoming me into your weird rhizomic world. I'm very grateful to be included.
Fantastic. And I just want to remind everybody that Kate will be reading at 6 p.m. And if you go to the Writers House website, you click on KWH-TV. And I might actually send a direct link out to everybody through a all-course message. Because if you watch that reading, I think you'll enjoy some of the poems from the arrangements and Dream of the Trenches, Zach, which is another book that's new, Dream of the Trenches, and maybe, in fact, other work, maybe even new work. Thank you. Okay, I want to turn to, I forgot who was next, but let's go to Gabe and then Jake for final thoughts.
Hi. Hello, Charles. It's kind of hilarious to see Charles speak and not hear what he's saying.
Wait, Charles is going to move so he can see you on the screen. Look at him.
Hello, Charles.
Charles is encountering the technology as if for the first time. Like, Hey, there's somebody I know on a TV.
That sounds like Charles. I mean, once Charles, I was doing a presentation in Charles's class, and he said to me, "You're so good at this computer," and I was like, "Thank you." My final word is just in hope of summary. For me, I think that the Whitmanian aesthetic is the hope that less formal writing will yield to a more democratic poetics.
Nice.
I think that the Dickinsonian aesthetic is a hope that a tighter and more partial form will lead to better attachments. And I think that like the reason we do week 2 and the way we do is not just to give the historical account in the sense that there is a lineage, there's people and people read other people, but also that these concerns of how like the form of a poem reflects or makes our forms of living is kind of the central concern of the course. And it's going to keep happening again and again and again. And we talk about democracy like every freaking week. So
Yeah.
that is my little summary of this.
Thank you, Gabe. That was just fantastic. Jake Marmer, final thought?
Yeah, thank you. I really liked what Anna said about poets who build communities. And this week, I'm thinking about a poet, a really great poet, who passed away this week, who was a real community builder, Steve Dolachinsky. He lived in New York and was deeply involved in free jazz and performance world, and tremendous influence on me and a friend and many other people. I've been seeing really beautiful tributes pouring in, and Charles actually wrote a very beautiful piece that he posted on Facebook too. That really moved me.
Yes, the poetry world is mourning Steve, and it was an unexpected loss for most of us. So thank you, Jake. Let's go to Erica, and then Max, and then I believe me, finally. So, Erica?
Hi. It always makes me very, very happy to see Charles. So, hi, Charles.
Erica's here too, Charles. It's a party.
2 lines are, I don't worry that words will fail me, but that I will fail words.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Erica. Okay, and I think very counterintuitive. Okay, my final thought is a triple shout out. One is to Mary Armour of Cape Town, I believe mostly, although is in Zimbabwe as well for her work. Mary's been associated with ModPo since 2012, so this is the 8th year. And Mary is talking on the forums with Anthony Watkins of Florida and some others. They all know each other so well. And I think they were comparing notes on MOOCs and MOOC platforms, and they decided that the edX platform, which we could have gone to instead of Coursera, its main flaw is that the discussion forums are no good, and so people can't talk to each other. So everything happens from the leader of the course out, and then you can reply, but you can't. There's not a lot of facilitation of student to student, participant to participant community making. And in the last paragraph of this long post about that, Mary describes what she takes to be ModPo success. And she says, ModPo success for me isn't primarily about cost and investment and labor. It's about risk and innovation. Not unlike modernism itself at its best, students wanted a safe, reliable, grounded space to talk to one another and find community, a forum designed actually by coders and platform providers and profit-making organizations. In the case of Coursera, a forum designed for a new pedagogy. The community and stability of ModPo comes from that leap into the dark after 2012. And so shout out to whoever made the forums, and Chris and Zach are going to be smiling when I say this, and Anna, because we've spent a lot of time out there in Palo Alto talking to those people, and they actually have learned from us how to improve the forums. Oh, yeah. So that is a weird thing. The second thing is I wanted to shout out to an increasing number, sadly, of people whose houses are being foreclosed. there's the housing market is just sort of shivering at the moment, and on one hand, housing prices are going up, so some people are selling houses now because the value has increased, but the kind of people who need the housing in a city like Philly are not able to afford those houses. And then at the same time, the banks are tightening up money, and they're actually foreclosing. And I thought it would be good, second to last, just to listen to Laureen Niedecker read this devastating poem from a long time ago about something that is absolutely still happening. I don't know how many times in a foreclosure situation the sheriffs and the bank actually show up together and boot you out, so that a poem like this, which is basically a reply to those people, might not actually happen face to face. It's usually faceless. But here is Laureen, as recorded by Sid Corman when he traveled out to see her in Wisconsin.
Foreclosure. Tell him to take my bare walls down, my cement abutments, their parties thereof and claws of claws. Leave me the land, scratch out the land. May prose and property both die out, and leave me peace.
May prose and property both die out, and leave me peace. Finally, I just want to quote at greater length the poem that Erica quoted, Liz Willis's Survey, which sort of fits in the Whitmanian side, but also has a lot of Dickinsonian things about it. I've quoted this before, forgive me if you've heard it, but it's a really great poem, and it says something a little related to the economic concerns that I expressed through the foreclosure poem. This is Liz Willis's Survey. It's the end of it. I think we all need a vacation. I wish I were an oceanographer like my father, or the one he could have been. I wish that time could be turned off like a machine. I hope eventually we can speak freely of everything. I'd like to graduate from the United States of plastic. I'd like to face the future as if it were a person. I'd like to touch it and still come home for dinner. I want to introduce you to my boat. I think that everything can't wait until tomorrow. I hope you're awake when I get there, that you'll be with me at the end. That is just such a great poem. Kate, Colby, thank you again so much for hanging with us, and we're looking forward to the reading. Ambrose, you doing okay? That poem is amazing, right? I mean, I just want to get home for dinner, you know. That's rough. Thank you all for being ModPo people. Jess, such a delight to have you join us this year.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
it's my
great.
pleasure.
And to folks who've come back to us, Gabe, Amaris, we are a family. It's great. Charles, thanks for being in the course and for visiting today. And most importantly, probably Zach and Chris. You people solve all kinds of problems behind the scenes. And Zach and Chris has now taken over a job that used to be somebody's job, which is to answer the phone. You're doing all these things at once. So no snaps, but actual applause to these people. And Claire, our very first and onlyest, at the moment anyway, ModPo intern, thank you. We'll see you all a week from today, but meantime, people are writing essays on that Dickinson poem, and people are in the forums. Please have your meetups and go to office hours, and we'll see you later. Thanks a lot.